Hey, this is Noor Naseer for AdTech Unfiltered. Today we're diving into one of the most talked about and misunderstood topics in AdTech, curation. Curation is often reduced to packaging inventory, but as my guest today makes clear, it's far more powerful than that. At its core, curation is about real-time optimization, helping buyers cut through complexity, reduce waste, and unlock higher quality outcomes from the open internet. Joining me is Filippo Gramigna, co-CEO of curation platform Onetag, to break down what curation really is, the problems it solves, and why it may be the future of programmatic trading. We'll discuss topics including AI's role in making it more scalable to how it can reshape the economics between buyers and sellers. Let's get into it with Filippo now. Filippo, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So I'll hop right into the most simplistic question. Share your definition of what curation is.
Yeah, simple question and simple answer. So curation for me is the way to optimize inventory in real time for the buyer's outcome. That's pretty much my short definition of what curation is.
What problem is curation really solving for?
Yeah, I think curation really solves concrete problems. I always like to start a little bit from a high-level perspective about talking around what programmatic has been created for. Initially for automation, right? To bring automation of selling and buying ads online, right? Which is fine. And we are still working out the intricacies of how to make it more efficient and working around that. But there are three main areas where I think curation can really solve concrete problems. One is an element of complexity and data cost for the DSPs. As you probably know, DSPs have a certain amount of QPS, query per second, and traffic they can listen to, and they have to manage a ton of complexity and a ton of cost. So they cannot listen to the old traffic. They need to make some hard choices for that. And that's the first problem, which limits their ability to discover what's available in the open internet. And this brings to the second problem, which I think is also even more interesting. I like to make an example almost in the real life. It's almost like there is an imbalance between the seller and the buyer in terms of amount of information. It's more almost like going into a retail shop and you want to buy a product on the shelf and you don't find the information on the ingredients. How can you make an informed decision? This is exactly what happens on the placements of the publishers most of the times. So the buyers, the DSP, need to buy something to learn if this something is good or bad, which is a burn and learn approach, which is totally inefficient from a return on investment perspective. Which brings us to the third problem, which is the amount of waste that is still happening for, IVT traffic, non-viewable inventory, MFA sites, etc. So these three big problems are things that curation can solve practically and give, better efficiency and better effectiveness at the end of the day for the constituencies, right? The publishers, but also the buyers on the other side.
Yeah. Obviously, you just mentioned a lot of the potential upside of using curation, but who do you think benefits the most? Is there one party in particular, and how would you define who those audiences are?
There's been a lot of debate, especially lately, about who really benefits out of curation. And most of the times people talk about curation having in mind the buyers, benefits, and publishers are still struggling to understand, is this good or bad for us? Is this something that is giving us more opportunities? Is this something that we are losing control of our inventory? But again, I think what we like is to look at the data always, right? Trying to understand if the data tells us something that is meaningful for the constituencies. On the publisher side, what we have seen is that curation brings more competition and better prices. So we have seen a 40% increase in bid density. So there's more competition on the auction, which brings automatically to a better pricing and yield management on the publisher side. Obviously, on the other side, on the buyer side, you need to find the right balance because the buyers want to have the opposite. They want to have better prices, cheaper prices, right? But what I think is even more important is the outcomes, right? Because the price is a relative KPI. Could be good, could be high, could be low. It depends on what you are getting out of that price, right? So at the end of the day, curation is there to find the right balance between the sellers and the buyers, having in mind that the outcome is what ultimately matters. Because if the outcome is there, then the buyer will continue to buy and then the publisher will get more in revenue and there will be more competition. So everyone will be happier in that sense.
Yeah. Fair point. I think people are still struggling to assess if they feel the way that you've described it. Also, this point about the open marketplace, which you've already raised a little bit earlier. Do you think that the open marketplace is dying as a result of some shifts in these buying practices?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's changing. Definitely. The open marketplace is changing. The use of AI tools like ChatGPT will make a change on how people consume content. But I think the open internet is so vast and there's so much value that if you have the right technology on how to uncover that value, which is hidden in the open internet, there's still a ton of potential. If you think about how people engage with verticalized content, right? I mean, people don't necessarily just use the open internet to read news or to interrogate for something specific that they need to find. They also like to engage and to read content with their own time. So this is something that curation can uncover in terms of value, especially if you're able to do it at a granular level, right? To really understand where the people are more engaged, where there's more quality, where there is, at the end of the day, the best engagement for the buyers.
Where do you think the most valuable part of the open web is from the perspective of buyers?
I think that there is, it's a matter of, if you think about the open internet, if you find the right partners from a technology standpoint, you have more control. Walled gardens have a ton of data. They provide definitely fantastic outcomes, but it's less control. The control is in the hands of the walled gardens, and that's how they're called in this way. Open internet is more democratized in that sense, and it's more complicated, to be honest. It's more, there are more intricacies. That's why I say it's important to be knowledgeable, to understand what type of technology partners to use. Test a lot, and then you will see that you can actually have better control, more transparency. And at the end of the day, if you use the right data also in the open internet, you can actually compare good results comparable to the walled gardens.
You just said it a second ago, and you mentioned it earlier, the example of being able to assess the ingredients, and currently that's not totally a part of the equation. What does real transparency mean to you? What's the most ideal circumstance around transparency for buyers that they don't currently have?
I think there is sometimes a little bit of a misconception about what transparency should mean. Sometimes people think about transparency as a financial problem. They want to understand, okay, how much money you make? What's your take rate? Which is could be a fair question, could be also not a fair question. I mean, I'm not necessarily able to understand in the real world what's the margin that a retailer does. What I care is the quality of the product. What I care is the outcome that I can get out of specific need that I need to cover. So I think it's important that transparency for me is more about, again, understanding how the technology works, what type of data is being used, if there's transparency around where my ads are being running. This is really important, right? Less important is about how much money are you making. I mean, if someone wants to uncover that, fantastic. If not, what's more important is how you make the technology work. So asking the right questions when it comes to having a new technology partner, understanding if they're built something with their own technology, if they're using a third-party technology, what type of data they're using, especially in curation. So curation can actually have, if you think about curation, is going at the source of the inventory, of the media, and being able to understand what type of data can be used in an intelligent and real-time way. This is really, really important, right? Because lots of people talk about curation as packaging of inventory and media. Packaging, for me, is a very static word. It's putting things together that are ready, again, static elements, like it's almost like a puzzle. Curation is not like that. Curation is a real-time optimization engine that basically checks what each placement, each single bid request or impression can deliver based on historical data, but also predictive data. This is something that is much more nuanced. This is much more granular. And curation doesn't do the job itself alone. Curation can do a great job in conjunction with a DSP, because a DSP has other type of functionalities and they work in complementarity. It's not just the one can do the job for the other. I think this is the real thing that can actually unlock much more power in the programmatic space.
Nothing's going to mark the timing of this interview quite like me asking you this question. It's asking about AI. What do you think the right conjunction is to make curation a more automated and transparent and just a more high-value process?
AI is going so fast that I'm still scratching my head in terms of really understanding what parts of AI can be applied. We have a very good foundation in our company. I think we have been investing for so many years, more than 10 years, in data science and machine learning, which is not AI. It's a component of AI, obviously. So having a good understanding of what very advanced machine learning can bring, because obviously, as I said before, real-time optimization means that you need to have constant delivery of new algos that are predicting what's good and what is bad, right? This is a very good foundation. And then AI comes in, and then AI, I think, can do a fantastic job on the operational side of the business, making things more automated and simple. If you think about all the reporting and insights you can get from an AI that can actually check the data for you in real time. I mean, WPP announced their platform recently, which actually gives a ton of value And I think, again, there is a matter of having the right complementarity between the human element and the machine element. I think about, strategy and goals, definitely in the hands of the humans. And then everything else could definitely be automated and in order to have faster attaining operations.
Filippo, what does pre-bid intelligence mean to you?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Pre-bid, the word says itself, right? It's something that happens before the bid comes in. Pre-bid decisioning, the sell-side decisioning, as we call it, is a way of really thinking through that if you are listening to the whole traffic, you are at the source of what then gets passed to the DSP, right? So making a decision before someone else makes a second decision is also very important because you have more information at hand to make that informed decision, as I was saying before, because you have all the information about the traffic that you have. And in order to make this happen, and no one talks about that, is the critical importance about the infrastructure. Infrastructure meaning, the cloud. Every company in this space goes into the public cloud, AWS, GCP, Azure, and everything. They are all fantastic technologies. They provide immediate scale, but they provide also immediate cost. So I think finding the right balance between your own infrastructure, on-prem or, private cloud and the public cloud is the secret that we have been investing for so many years. This is so important because if you're able to manage the cost in a very advanced way, then this brings you to the ability to listen to a huge amount of traffic and then reinvest that money into machine learning, AI, advanced tools for this pre-bid decisioning, which is something that is super powerful.
What are your observations right now about the reception of curation in this moment for publishers and separately for buyers?
I think there is a ton of interest, and I like that when there is interest and debate, because I think people want to understand. In the beginning, people were saying, curation is just, the old networks. It's about repackaging. It's about repurposing. It's a buzzword. I don't think it's a buzzword, not because we work on curation, because I've been thinking a lot and speaking with a lot of peers in the industry. And if curation is done right, then it brings value. If curation is, again, packaging of something that is already made available, then it's a buzzword, then it's an automated network, a type of approach. And again, we need to look at the data. Always, right? I mean, as I said before, for publishers, it's about giving them transparency about what curation can bring to them. It's about communicating and educating also, right? We work with more than 2,000 publishers globally. We are receiving lots of questions, right? I mean, can we do curation ourselves? Is it curation good? What type of brands are buying our inventory? Why curation versus open internet? A ton of questions that are all legitimate and all good. So I think it's about the curation technologies need to also think about educating the market, talking about the curation, and being able to think through if there's anything that can be improved around curation, because nothing, is created perfect. So I think there's a ton of evolution that can be still happening in curation. For example, outcomes, really thinking about closing the loop between what is on the DSP side in terms of data and what is on the exchange or curation side in terms of data. These two brains typically don't talk to each other because they are separated for some reason. But being able to close this loop with some new product evolution could be something really powerful, because then there is an imbalance of information on the two sides, right? If the DSP is able to share a portion of that information to the curation becomes more powerful. Hence, it brings back to the DSP more outperforming inventory, hence better outcomes. And then the loop continues in a very virtual way.
What has you excited moving into the back half of the year about the receptivity of curation?
I think the most exciting thing is that things are progressing very fast, as always in this industry, not only from an interest perspective, but, people are tapping into curation, they're testing, they want to see the results. And I think curation can be applied very wide range of what we are doing in programmatic. Curation is omnichannel by definition. There are different type of flavors of curation, because you could do curation on web display in a different way that you can do that on CTV versus audio or digital of home. Obviously, being able to really understand that element is very interesting. What I really liked, I was telling you before, I listened to one of your recent interviews to Richard Tobacco-Valle, and I liked one thing that he mentioned of the power of poetry and plumbing. Programmatic has been always about plumbing, about connecting pipes of supply and buyers. But what has been overlooked is the power of the creative element, the message. So being able to bake this messaging, the creative element, into curation with data, then I think this is something super, super interesting and powerful.
Well, Filippo, I think you're a great ambassador for the future of curation and so many of the things that there's a lot of misunderstanding even now about the space. So excited to see what you do moving forward.
Thanks a lot.
That's it for today's conversation on curation with Filippo Gramigna. A closer look at curation offers opportunities to solve for real inefficiencies, drive better outcomes, and create more balance between buyers and publishers. The future of programmatic isn't just about plumbing the pipes. It's about laying in intelligence, transparency, and even creativity to make the ecosystem work better for everyone. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a colleague, and stay tuned for more conversations that unpack where ad tech is headed. I'm Noor Naseer. More ad tech unfiltered coming up soon.